Okay. Welcome, everybody. Let's be seated and take off. It will be interpreted, this lecture, to Danish in channel 2 and German, Deutsch, in Kanal 4. Ja, ich soll Deutsch sprechen, nicht wahr? Nein. Let's take it in English. And the topic for this evening is mental sovereignty. Is that possible to get this mental sovereignty? Are you there already? Well, yes, it is possible, says Martinus. That's the reason why we are here in this physical world. We are here to learn to think and feel in harmony with life. And that means to think in a loving way and act in joy, for the joy and blessing for all living beings, for nature, for the planet, for our fellow beings, for our micro beings. And it's also to be able to think in harmony with the logic of life, with the laws of life. So that is the purpose. That's why we are here. That's the school of life. But I'm happy we have some more lifetimes to come to that state of consciousness. Maybe there are more people in this room that can feel that their thoughts run away with them on paths you didn't really want to go. And for instance, also when you wake up in the middle of the night, you start to worry about something, maybe something with your children or a stressful situation at your work. And there in the darkness, when you don't have any other input from the outside, these thoughts can grow, and it's hard to fall asleep again. And when you wake up and go up into daylight again, you look at the problems you were wrestling with in the night, and you think, why did I bother so much about that? The proportions they get smaller problems in daylight when you're in contact with the world around you. So it's not so easy to master your mind, but that is, as we said, the purpose of being here. So what does it mean to have this mental sovereignty? What does it, and how does the road to this state of consciousness look like? What does it look like? Well, to get some, temperature, take the temperature on our consciousness, we will look at this thing, how we can have a proper outlook on life. And a quote from Martinus that kind of puts it into a little bit challenging perspective. He says the following: as long as a human being thinks that something is wrong, he's not in harmony with life. As long as someone is sad, annoyed, or becomes embittered and disappointed, one has not yet acquired a correct outlook, and then one cannot face up to and love life properly. So, it's kind of tricky to look at this if you think something is wrong, you're not in harmony with life. What does he mean with that? Because I think I do a lot of wrong things, and I think there's a lot of wrong things going on. So here we have to have two different perspectives, the absolute cosmic perspective and the temporal perspective. Of course, we do things that are wrong in that perspective, that we do mistakes. And these mistakes, they create problems for us. But as we are here in the school of life, in this physical realm, that is one of the purposes of being here is to make mistakes. Because when you do mistakes, you learn. And we are here to learn in the school of life what is good and what is bad. And that's why we also do these mistakes, because that's where we gather knowledge. So from an absolute perspective, all experiences we do are right. We shall do these mistakes because that's the part of the process to get this mental sovereignty, where we, as cosmic conscious being, in a perfect way can distinguish between what is good and bad, because we have done all the mistakes. So a cosmic conscious being has done much more wrong than we have, because they have gone all the way and done all the mistakes. So we shall, in a way, be grateful that we have the possibility to do these mistakes. That's the way to learn. This mental sovereignty we have seen when Jesus handled the crucifixion as he did. He could forgive the people that was torturing him and putting him up on the cross. He could be in balance. He didn't become outrageous and angry. And if I see myself in the same situation, I'm not sure I would handle it that way. Probably I would be disappointed and angry at them. So there are some more steps in our evolution to come to that perfect state of consciousness. Martinus couldn't get angry and he couldn't lie. There is this story when he's on this his working place where he's at the telephone and the telephone rings and somebody's asking for the boss. So he tells the boss, "You got the telephone?" And he says, "Say I'm not here." "But you are here." He couldn't lie. It was impossible for him. So when you come to that state of consciousness where you know in a perfect way what is wrong, and you've done all the emotional experience of all this wrongness, then it's impossible to do it again. You can only practice love in all situations. Roberto Assagioli, who have started this psychological treatment and theory, psychosynthesis, one of his pupils said to him, "We should follow our feelings, shouldn't we?" "No, you shall not follow your feelings. Your feelings shall follow you." That's kind of also intriguing to think about, that we are the creator of all our thoughts and all our feelings. Of course, we listen to all these states of our consciousness, but we are the master who creates all these feelings and thoughts. And we can be aware and conscious about this creation and be the master in all situations. That is what we are heading for. Martinus had his cosmic consciousness, and that means he had a quite different view of life. He went through this enormous transformation from having a local perspective in the temporal world where we live with our senses, and to get this cosmic view, this universal view of life. And he describes this shift in the following way. Whereas before I had only been conscious in a certain time and a certain space, I had now become in a certain way conscious in all times and in all spaces. Whereas my consciousness before this experience of mine was an expression of local consciousness, it had now become an expression of universal consciousness. That's a very interesting shift, to have a universal consciousness. When you're aware of your eternal existence, when you view life from that perspective, and you know that I am the creator of all my thoughts, all my feelings, of my body, and I am the master of time and space, then you can look at life and the fates of your fellow beings and your own fate in a quite another way. You see the purpose, you see the meaning, that as a purpose in this divine plan, that we are a part of a divine plan, now developing from an animal being to a real human being, all heading for this cosmic consciousness. There you can see that all fate of mankind, wherever it is around this planet, if it's Ukraine or if it is in the United States or in Africa, wherever you go, and if you see different fates, they are an expression of this process where the Godhead is lifting us up to a higher step of evolution. And in that perspective, they can feel and see that everything is very good. It's nothing wrong, even though we experiment and do things that are in disharmony with the laws of life. He could also move around in time and space. So if we look at our own way of experiencing life, if I ask you now to move to another space, how do you do that? You do it through your memories. So if I ask you, go into the kitchen at home. You can see your kitchen. Maybe I say, go back to when you were 10 years old, and maybe you could see, at least you remember a picture of yourself 10 years old. So you can move around in your inner world, but we are stuck in this physical body, so we can only use our memories. But a cosmic conscious being can focus on anything in the universe, in history, and be there. They can move with our thought to another planet. Even though Martinus had his physical body, he could focus with intuition, he could be there. If you read the book Easter by Martinus, I have myself been a bit astonished how he can talk about Jesus, how he came with a red robe and how he experienced the process in Gethsemane garden and on the crucifixion. How can he tell about that? Because with his cosmic consciousness, he goes into the gold copies, the memories in Jesus' consciousness, and can see what he experienced. He couldn't feel it, because that's another thing, but he could see it, so he can tell us about what Jesus went through in these days. So it's quite another freedom in time and space. You are the master of time and space. You can move in the history of the universe, you could say. So with that perspective, everything they see, all fate that we go through, has a purpose. But that is really a contrast to the way we experience life with our five senses. Here in time and space, we are kind of fixed here in time. We are fixed in the physical world, in this body. And when we judge life from that perspective, he says, we are involved in an illusion. We do not see the real life. It's interesting when people have near-death experiences. They also say, it's much more real here than when I am in my body. But if you then have the cosmic consciousness, you see through all these illusions. But there's nothing wrong with being in these illusions. That's kind of the trick of the universe, to encapsulate us in time and space, so we can all build up this new consciousness through all the mistakes that makes us feel and notice the difference between good and bad. So he also then says that where ignorance is removed, the so-called evil will cease to exist. So our process is to come out of these illusions and come out of our ignorance, because we know from the physical world that our problems is created by mistakes. We learn so much from the physical world. We are training our intelligence. And if I shall cook a meal and I'm not really aware of what I'm doing, maybe I put salt instead of sugar in a cake I should bake. And then I will be deeply disappointed of the taste. But I know it's not God punishing me. I know I made a mistake. I was not aware what I was doing. It was my ignorance creating the problems. And it's the same thing with our fate. There's nobody punishing us. It's our ignorance that make us make mistakes. So when we have made these mistakes, we learn, we become more aware, and we will not do the same mistakes, at least not so many times. But sooner or later we will learn from our mistakes. It's the same thing if a space rocket explodes. The scientists know we did something wrong in the calculations. And now we are learning to see that it is the same thing with our fate, it is the same thing with our thoughts, with our feelings. It's a question of a learning process of coming out of this illusion. And the greatest illusion is, as we said, we are stuck in matter. We think that the physical world is the real world. But if I'm correct with the science, they say that here in the universe we see it's only 5%, circa 4 or 5%, that is the physical world. The rest of the world is invisible. But the invisible world, Martinus says, that is the world of consciousness. And the consciousness is keeping all these planets and electrons and organs and my movements of my hand. It's our consciousness that is moving matter and hold everything in its place. And to learn to know life, consciousness behind matter, well, that is so important. As long as we are stuck here, we are living in these illusions. Martinus says, but to know or sense only a local area and to believe it to be the whole is the same as to live under an illusion. And later in the same text it says, the cause, also this is the cause of terrestrial mankind's daily existence being a life of disappointment, sorrow, and suffering. So materialism is the fundamental thinking error behind all suffering. That's why we, as we heard this morning, believe that we could kill our enemies and they will disappear. They will not disappear because their consciousness will incarnate again and we will tumble around until we have become friends. The only way to get rid of your enemies is to become their friend. And that you could start right now. Don't wait, because the earlier we come in this process, the better our life will become. So when we are so stuck in material facts, and we've been studying matter with science and our everyday life and our struggle in life, building houses and all these things, we are so filled with matter in our psyche. And so many wise people say, you become what you think about. Because thoughts are something. They are matter, psychic matter. So my aura is kind of filled with all the thoughts I'm thinking and have been thinking. And that means if we are very, very occupied and busy with thinking about matter and worried about economy and worried about the situation in the world and worried about this and that in the physical world and studying all the details of all the things going on the planet, that will fill our aura, that will create a vibration in our energy field. And the same thing when we study spiritual things, art and science, and try to understand life, that will also fill our aura with quite another vibration. I have a personal experience. It's not a scientific investigation or study, but my personal experience with one person close in my life that was very, very materialistic, very much into this with money and status and matter. When I came to his funeral, I had this experience that there was nobody there. It was like the coffin was there, the church was empty, if you understand me. And another person that was very much into spiritual things and was very humane in her actions in everyday life. When I came to her funeral, it was a very fantastic atmosphere. It was like the church was filled with a nice atmosphere. And I think about this, when we go out of our physical body, we go into living in the consciousness. And if we remember, we talked about in the middle of the night, we wake up, and we have no input from the outside world. The inner world takes it all, so to say, and it becomes a kind of bubble we are living in. And when we die, it could be the same thing. The thoughts we are used to think in this physical world will create our world around you. And we will be very busy with these thoughts. And if it's very, very earthbound, we will be earthbound in the way we experience life after death. But if we are very connected with the living around us, nature, living beings, and want to be a joy and blessing for our surroundings, we will be connected with the soul of the universe. We will be connected with the universe in a quite another way. And that was my personal experience in these two funerals, that there was kind of a connection with the spiritual world in this last funeral that made an impression. And I think we are what we think, and the death will also be influenced by the way we used to think. And of course, it's much easier, the transition that we will hear more about in Søren's lecture tomorrow, if we are really filled with these feelings of love and humaneness and so on. So, when we think, it influences our life. To love matter is the same as to think about matter. And whatever one thinks about, one becomes. That is to say, it develops in one's consciousness. So, what kind of mental habits are we training in everyday life? Here we have a lot of choices in everyday life. And now when we are studying this for a week or for many weeks, it does something with our vibration. Let's look closer to this. And Martinus says, in the midst of all this matter or sensing of matter, each being sees in reality only his own I. Everything revolves around this I, and it is the being's desire to bring everything under its control. And this is where they come into conflict with the laws of life. You could say selfish thoughts are very small thoughts. And when we walk along the beach here with the sea and the nature and the birds singing and so on, some people are really in connection with the nature and it fills them with a joy and a blessing. But we can also have a so-called bad day, as we usually, I think many of us have once in a while, filled with a problem or a sorrow or something. And we can walk in nature and we don't experience nature. We don't really realize, did I walk out there or where was I? Because we weren't in the outside, we were occupied by these worries or problems. So the word was very little around my little eye. And can I connect with the world around me? My thoughts become bigger. I'm in connection with the soul of the universe. He continues, the laws of life decree that the individual or the I should make itself the master of matter, but the servant of his fellow beings. So it is necessary for us to have this journey into matter. It is necessary, says Martinus, to have the journey so deep into matter that we lose contact with the divine, that we believe that we are matter. We should lose contact with God. That is one of the phases we have to go through, to be able to come back to God, not in an instinctive way, but a conscious way, and from a longing because of all these experiences we have done here in the physical world. So when we become, as we have been in many ways now, we are today a master of matter. When the moral standard grows through the suffering we see today in the world, we will get more and more longing to use this knowledge to be in a joy and blessing for all living beings around us. And that is the journey we are heading for. So we will come to a situation where all technology will be in harmony with the ecological systems, where there will be no waste products that will come out in nature and no plastic into our brain and blood as we see today, because we will know everything about matter, and then we will know we have to use it to help all living creatures, human beings, the planet, the micro beings, the animals, so we can live in harmony with this life system that we are a part of. So it is necessary, and it's really a good thing that we are so big a master of matter today with our space rockets and computers and electric cars and so on. And now we are heading for this state of consciousness where we become the master of our mind, also from a moral perspective. And then we will use all this knowledge to get a better life for everybody. But we are not there yet, as we see when we look out in the world, and probably also when we look into our inner world. And Martinus has a very interesting concept. He's talking about mental desert plants. And it's connected with the picture, the image we see here, this golden calf, the new religion, the religion that is so strong that it overrules the religions we have on this planet. And it's not something wrong with that, because it's a natural process. And we understand, if we look out in the world, that the fight for survival for so many people on this planet is so urgent. We have to get money, we have to have income to pay for food on the table, to have housing and so on. So many people are struggling with everyday life. And what they need to get their life in a proper way and get food and housing, that's money. And that has become the religion in a way that fills so many people's consciousness. And that is quite natural where we are now. But it does really make some problems within us. We become so earthbound and we lose contact with the universe, the soul of the universe. And it also changes the way we relate to each other. Because money has been kind of a, as we'll see, a kind of a tool that creates selfishness, getting further and further up in evolution, because it's kind of invisible how it is working in our society. But in a way, money has become the blood that keeps our society running, and everybody is dependent on money. Martinus says, these many plant species, also thinking about money and matter and survival in that area, these many plant species of the mental desert vegetation have gradually become a vital necessity for people, at the same time as being extremely unhealthy for the soul, since they are nearly all infected with a certain percentage of a well-hidden poison called dishonesty. This poison is absolutely deadly to the creation of real, lasting happiness. So why does money tend to poison our mind with dishonesty? Well, if we look at the commercials, advertisements, are we trusting them fully? Or do we sometimes think, we see people buying these things, they look so happy and they become so beautiful and everything is very good in their life. They buy this car and so on, this house. So it seems like to gather all this money that we can, these things we can buy, it will create a good life. So of course you want to have this money. And if you go into social media and look at the titles of some YouTube videos, many of them you think, oh, that sounds fantastic. I must see that video. And when you see it, you don't find these fantastic things. But the title was so good because then they could get a like. They get people to see it. So you earn money by cheating people to come in to look at this. And now it's really extreme to see how many AI things that are streaming into our social media. You become more and more confused. What is the truth? But if you go back to our everyday life, we have, I think, the tendency to think that I would like to have as much as possible for my money and pay as little bit as possible. And if I should sell my house, shall I really be honest to tell about that problem in the house? Or the car, if I sell the car, shall I tell about, shall I paint a little bit about over so they don't see and so on? It's really, really, what do you say, frestande, heter det? Tempting to try to hide a little bit of the problems so you can get some more money, because it is so, you could say, an infectious disease in our society, and that everybody is dependent on this money, and so many people feel a lack of money when they look at how many things they could buy and so on. So in a way, selfishness is kind of sneaking in to our culture in many ways. And that is, in a way, a part of this Armageddon, this doomsday. This society with this capitalistic system is, in fact, one of the causes of the wars we see around the planet, because it is a struggle about ownership. It's a struggle about the resources. They want to earn things for their nation and so on. And we see all these struggles. So the struggle for matter and money is really a part of the wars that bloom here today. So he says, everyone is compelled to take part in this hunt. It has gradually become such an all-outshining vital necessity that it has eclipsed religion and the worship of God. So even though people go to church some hours in the week, a big part of the week is still occupied by money and matter. So the golden calf is living really a good life right now in our culture. If we go back to our own way of relating to life, and we remember the first quote about having a local consciousness or a universal consciousness. The way we look at things going on in life is very influenced by this temporal perspective, and it makes us judge a lot of things in an unfair way. So many of our judgments is very, very local. We don't see the whole perspective. And in fact, that's the cause behind all disappointments and anger and so on. So here we can conclude that all judgment or judgmental relations to life and views of life, they are from a cosmically point of view untrue. If I would stumble and the computer would fall down, I would probably say, oh, I'm an idiot. Have you said that to yourself sometimes? Maybe at home, not on the stage, but at home. When you do something, oh, it goes terrible, and you say, oh, I'm an idiot. And then you can ask, is it true? Are you an idiot? Am I an idiot because I did something wrong? That is to mix the local and the eternal perspective. The I can never be an idiot. You are never an idiot. But you can do things that can make lives complicated and things break and so on. But that's quite another thing. And if we look out in the world, maybe we say, Trump is an idiot. Or other people say, Trump is a saint. He's a savior. Putin is an idiot. And so on. We have all these judgments from a temporal perspective. But from a cosmic perspective, you can never say that it's never true to say that Trump is an idiot, or Putin is an idiot, or Netanyahu. Because then we fix this eternal being into a temporal state in space and time and say, that's him. That's not true. Everybody is the divine eternal being. And if you look from a cosmic point of view, we can start to ask, why have the providence put these leaders on the stage? What's the purpose? What's the meaning? What shall I learn about this? From a cosmic point of view, there are no idiots because everybody is a part of God. Everybody is speaking to us, telling us something. And that's really the shift from the temporal perspective to the eternal questions. Where is God? How is God present in this situation, in this world situation? What does God want to do with mankind? What kind of awakening are we going through? What kind of new culture is going to bloom after the destruction of these structures that we see now in a very quick way is destroyed and changing? So all these judgments, we are imprisoning ourselves, in fact, when we judge the surrounding world from a temporal perspective and don't ask why. All judgment, all harsh criticism and blaming can be nothing more than a result of its originator's own spiritual or mental imperfectness. And as only a mentally imperfect being can manifest harsh blaming or criticism towards his neighbor, thereby judging his neighbor to be a mentally imperfect being, it will therefore, from a cosmic point of view, be exclusively his own mental imperfectness that he is revealing. With his judgment of others, he is therefore judging himself. And in a way, he's judging God, blaming God for the unpleasant. And as we said, when I'm baking my cake and I take salt instead of sugar, no, God didn't punish me. I learned my lessons. And we are learning lessons on this planet now very quickly. It's going very quickly. We shall, of course, analyze and evaluate things in life. We need to do that to do a proper decision in life. That's quite another way than be judgmental or have a doom over other people or the world situation. So then Martinus says, when it relates to our fellow beings, if we don't have anything good to say, so be quiet. But the good thing with all these experiments we're doing with our untrue judgments from a temporal perspective is that it does create problems. When we have an untrue understanding of life, we make short circuits. We get conflict with other beings, with life, and also within. So all untrue ideas create suffering. So that's the wise construction of the universe. We will always get feedback, and it will help us through the suffering to start to ask the real questions. Why am I here? What is the purpose? What does God want to tell me with my fate? Martinus says the following. This state of despair, anxiety, and agony are really a kind of cry to God for help. And from the moment a human being comes into this state, it becomes more and more able to use its intelligence in the spiritual areas. And this is the awakening process that we are in now, after have been buried us so much in matter and thoughts about money and these problems. It comes to a point where we are totally satiated of all these problems in the physical world, and we're longing back to life, deepest seen, back to God. And we start to look for life behind matter, and it will gradually appear for us. It therefore begins to become aware that there exists other kinds of answers, namely answers based on signs of life. So suffering is God's way to make us aware of the laws of life. It is not a punishment, it is a gradual, loving awakening of our consciousness. So signs of life, behind all the movement, behind all matter, it is a study of the willpower of the universe and the way the universe reacts. There is a wish, there's a will behind all the movements in the universe. And everything in our way of looking at life will change when we see life from a higher perspective. Everything shows to be divine. It says, the aim of the living being's evolution, its gaining of experience and all its experiences, both unpleasant and pleasant, is exclusively to make the individual a servant of his living fellow beings. But as the living fellow beings are the same as life, and life in turn is in reality the same as providence or the Godhead, it means that the living being should serve the Godhead. The living being has to evolve to the stage where it can see the Godhead in any form of life whatsoever and can thereby serve this form of life. So this world, this view of God being present in everything, it makes a total different way of relating to humans, to animals, to the planet, to microcosmos. Through the religions in all times, we have been longing to have a good relation to God. Long ago, we sacrificed human beings to the gods to make them pleased. Later, animals or flowers or fruits. We have been praying to God because we want to be in harmony with God's will. Now we have a spiritual science that makes it possible for us to start to think God's thoughts and to start to think about the laws of life and start in the same way as we've been a master of matter and the physical world, to be able to be a scientist in our inner world and our relations, so we could have the same perfection in creating the thoughts, the feelings, the relations to all living beings around us. So we've been longing for that so long through history, and now we have the possibility to make it a science. How can we cooperate with God? The road out of our mental imprisoning could also be described in this way. The one thing that today prevents terrestrial human beings from being happy is thus exclusively the fact that they still have not learned that happiness exists absolutely only in the form of living for the benefit of their neighbor, their surroundings, or their fellow beings. And I think when we think about it and we talk with other people and ask, when have you really been happy? So many people say that it was when I could help that person. It was when I could support that person that was in a sad state, there was a sorrow and so on. We do really feel that we are connected with life when we can be a joy and blessing for other beings. Or it could be also with art or scientific or technical solutions where we help the evolution of mankind. It can really make us connect with this divine presence in life and come in harmony with the keynote of the universe, with a neighborly love. It requires something from us because we are the master in our inner world. It's us that have to change the thoughts, the feelings, be aware of them, and try to cleanse out old thought climates from the animal kingdom and the way we think about, for instance, money and matter, and start to move our way of thinking towards this spiritual way, on this serving of our fellow beings. So we have an inner work to do, but we also have a challenge to relate to our surroundings. Because it's not only a question of mastering your inner world, you have to be strong enough also to leave old traditions, old tendencies in the flock around us, in nationalism and other flock tendencies. And we really need a lot of courage to leave the flock. Some people on this planet now is leaving a country in war because they don't want to be warriors anymore. They have so many lifetimes in war. They rather die themselves than kill anybody else. And so many people are changing their lifestyle, their diet, their relation to alcohol and so many things. It can be hard in relation to the flock and the traditions. Because so many people, they do like this. They would rather follow the flock the wrong way than go the right way alone. Because to be alone makes us very afraid. Because we have so many lifetimes where it has been so dangerous to be outside of the flock. It's much more safe if you go with the flock. So it's really need a strength to be able to go the right way alone. And here we need this spiritual strength, the necessity of a spiritual view and personal experience. Carl Gustav Jung, he lived and studied the human consciousness through the First World War, the Spanish flu, the Depression, the Second World War. And he got the question once in an interview, "Do you believe in God?" And he said, "No, I don't believe. I know." And he had also some near-death experiences, but he also had other spiritual experiences that strengthened the light within him to know that God exists. And his conclusion in his studies of mankind through these harsh times was, the individual who is not anchored in God can offer no resistance on his own resources to the physical and moral blandishments of the world. For this he needs the evidence of inner transcendent experience, which alone can protect him from the otherwise inevitable submersion into the mass. And many people today talk about their near-death experiences. People have memories from past lives. Some people experience so strong synchronicities that it's impossible to explain in other ways than it has to be some realm behind the physical. So they are strengthened in their view of life, or spiritual life. So they get a new viewpoint where they transcend time and space, and they have a glimpse of an eternal space behind. And there Martinus says that, and just as one has not been able to remove epidemics or illnesses by dictatorship, but only by scientific discoveries and overviews over the situations, so too the cult of the golden calf, the epoch of money, cannot be abolished by dictatorship, politics, dogmatic religion, the creation of unions or the like. This worship of idols, which is still based on people's underdevelopment, this all overshadowing control of gold or money over people's lives and behavior, can only be removed by means of the development of cosmic science or empirical insight into the meaning of life, the behavior of peace. So we really need a cosmic science. And people who get the personal experiences are also strengthened and see that there is a meaning of life. And we need these new idols that behave peacefully. Let us summarize here at the end of this lecture of how we build a higher consciousness, get an overview of this process. We live in the animal kingdom. In the animal kingdom, we have instinct, energy of gravity, this explosive energy that makes us want to tear the enemies into pieces. That is natural and quite right for the animal. That's all the suffering we have gathered and make our compassion grow. Our compassion with our feeling and intelligence, that's the humane energies building up the consciousness that will calm down the animal side so that we can be more still in our consciousness and can be able to create with compassion, love, and logical thinking. So, feeling and intelligence are the energies that when they become integrated, Martinus says, it will also create this feeling of love. And he concludes, well-developed feeling reveals itself as the faculty to feel compassion and enables the being to feel the urge to help other living beings in need. Whereas the faculty of intelligence enables the beings to regulate this urge to feel compassion, so it is logical. Such a harmoniously regulated sympathy with other living beings is the same as what we call love. Another totally basic process of the change of our consciousness to become these mental sovereign beings is the polar transformation. So we see the one-pole being, they have not developed enough with feeling intelligence to master their inner stress and urge to conquer and fight their fellow beings. The double-pole being has this balance between feeling and intelligence that opens up for intuition. And that is because the masculine and feminine pole have come into balance. He describes this process in this way. This new being differs from the male or the female being in that it has a double horizon. Whereas the male being senses in the main only in a masculine way, and the female being only in a feminine way, causing each of them to live within their own sphere of consciousness or horizon. The completely double-pole being senses in both a masculine and feminine way, and thereby has the possibility of experiencing life in both these great contrasting spheres. So the integration of feminine and masculine within us makes us get the whole picture, and coming out of this one-pole partial relation to life and get the double-pole impartiality. So we have this integration of feeling and intelligence. We have this integration of the masculine and feminine pole. Where they are integrated, we become more intuitive. And the intuition is also connected with the capacity for neighborly love. And as we said in the beginning, we have some more lifetimes to go to create this perfect human consciousness. So during the coming lifetimes, this intuitive way of relating to life will grow, and intuition and love will be the way we look at life. The cosmic science is kind of a catalyst in our consciousness for integrating feeling and intelligence. When we study these works of Martinus, we study intuition. It gives nourishment to that part of our brain, the way we look at life. So we are in fact training our intuition. But it is also trained by practicing the neighborly love, as he concludes here, to open up this cosmic consciousness. He says the following, the last quote for the lecture. Thus to stand face to face, temporally and physically, with eternity's greatest life artist, this source of love requires training. Only slowly can the beings accustom themselves to the light atmosphere of his presence. Only by training to love can their senses open up to the penetrating radiance of his countenance. Thank you for listening.